We
Can
can
I
try
tell you
doing
what
a
I've been
plan.
doing? And it's
Yes.
largely still been a failure for me. Is I start off with Jippity 5.2, X high, super all the way, and I say, hey, make a plan to do this thing. And then it comes out and makes this very extensive plan, ask me questions. And then this is what I did all weekend. And then on top of that, after doing that, I make it save it to a markdown file. Then I get out my Opus and I say, hey, go over the plan. And I
Yeah.
want you to give example code and correct anything that cannot be happening in this code. Right? Then it goes through and it gives example codes for each one of the steps. And then I go to Ralph, and then I go, Ralph, with Opus, walk over every single step and fix and implement this. And this is
Yes.
I'm trying to be like the most maximal AI Andy over the weekend. And
Yeah.
what I've currently successfully done is I have something that doesn't work in OBS and at 500s every now and then. Like, that's as far as I got. And I spent like 16 hours in this damn loop doing it. It ran for like 5 hours last night. Spent like $300, and I'm just like, brother, this is a Twitch and YouTube chat listener. This is like 0 seconds of my time to program. I could have done this in like 3 hours and had it working, and instead I've spent 16 hours and hundreds of dollars. I'm so like, I'm ready to die. All right, okay, so
Well, okay. Look, I love Prime. Super smart guy. He worked at Netflix, just in case you didn't know. And while he's a great software engineer, he's turning out to be a terrible vibe coder. But guess what? He's not alone. Yesterday, I went to the Cloudflare developer coffee meetup and spoke to a lot of people with varying degrees of experience using AI models to write code. And one of the biggest questions I got asked was, how are you finding it? What problems are you running into? And it turns out a lot of developers are pretty bad at vibe coding. Let's talk about it. In the next part of the clip, we're going to see Prime give his best shot at writing a super vague prompt on the advice from Mr. Cursor. This, in my experience, is the complete opposite way to go. And earlier in this clip, which I haven't shown, Prime gave a go at writing a really detailed, very developer-centric prompt, which again, also not advised, which is why he's not been having much success. But let's look at the prompt first, and then we'll go over it.
plan, going vague. What you're telling me is I should do something like, when walking around, let's say around the game, I want to, let's see, hold on. I don't know when I am near the edge of play. I can see with the coordinates that I hit 0, 0, but cannot go further into the negatives. I want to see a boundary slash wall around the entire map. Is that vague enough?
Yeah, I think that's great. Let's
Okay.
do
Not great. Not great at all. And while there probably is some further refining going on later on in this clip, as it is just a short clip from the stream, we're already off to a bad start. So let's first talk about what is good. What is good about this prompt is he's talking to it like a human. These models are natural language models. They're large language models. The interface with interacting with these models is via natural language, pattern recognition, statistical analysis, and a good way to harness the power of these models is by interfacing with it in the way that it knows, right? What's bad? This is a brand new prompt, seemingly with zero context. Yes, there may be like an MD file that has a overview that will be considered. I'm not that familiar with using open code, but with Claude Code, Claude will have a Claude MD file, and it will take into account when starting a plan everything that is kind of already a high level of the project and what it needs to achieve. What's glaringly obvious to me, as somebody that has actually built the exact thing that he's working on with Claude Code, is that he's not giving enough context. You see online and you see a lot of discourse around context, but usually we're talking about the context window itself during an active like prompt cycle. So we're going prompt, 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 prompt until we get what we want, and a lot of the time we hear people talking about the context that gets filled up, and if you use over 50-60% of your context, your subsequent results will be bad. Well, what I'm talking about is that context, but it's the context that you give the application when asking it to do something. So here he's saying, he's talking about the game, he's talking to it like a human, but he's not saying, okay, I've got a, so how, what I would do, okay, I've got a game. This game lives in this directory. This part of the, for example, say if it was a web application, I would give it the URL for that page that I was working on. So say the game was on, path XYZ. This is where it is. This is what it does. This is how it's not working. This is what I want it to do. This is how I want you to do it. Please go and investigate. Please ask me questions. Right? It's you can't just, it's imagine going up to a coworker or a colleague or any other person and just going, hey, so in the game, I can't reach the boundaries. There's no, I need there to be a border. They're going to say, what the hell are you talking about? We have this expectation that these models are smarter than they are, but we're not looking at what they actually are and how they actually work. To get what we want out of these models, we have to play off their strengths. Right. Let's carry on going and let's look into the next piece.
Do it.
Okay. Any help me's? Any let's come up with a plan? Do you need to say any of those like activation phrases?
No, we don't.
Since you're in the plan mode and prompt around planning, it should have something like, okay, now make a plan.
Yeah, we don't.
Okay.
Yeah, we don't need any of that. We don't need to say make a plan. We don't need any of these early catchphrases for. We just need it in plan mode. But we definitely should say ask me questions, because ask me questions is a very good way.
Okay, fair.
At least I think.
Okay, so right now I'm on Opus without high or max mode. So I'm not max mode on that ass, as they say. It's just like, and it's more speedy version. I assume it's fine to do more speedy versions during this phase until you get to the part where you want to just amp up that token spend.
Yeah, regardless of the speed of the inference, it's the same underlying model. So just usually the only difference is price.
Okay.
No, another thing I completely disagree with. You want to get all of the context up front, because if you think about when you're creating a plan, you want to create the best, most accurate plan that there is. And the more tokens you use to gather more context and get more information, the deeper dives you do onto each piece, the better idea of what it is that it's actually trying to achieve. So always plan on max mode. Currently, personally, I have a Claude Max subscription, so it's always in max mode. It's always ultra thinking. But avoid lazy planning. It's the same in life, right? Treat it like a human. If you do a lazy plan, you're probably going to get bad results.
Also, can I just ask you another question? This is kind of a contested point on the internet. What is XML, which I've heard a lot of people, I've had a lot of success with it, the best way to specify chunks? Because this goes back and forth and people are hot and frothy with these ones.
Yeah, it's a good question. So in some of the earlier models, a lot of the training actually happened with examples like this, where you could give it instructions in XML, and it was pretty good about using those as the way to, like, I don't know, put one document in here and then copy paste in some other text in here, and have it not get confused, like what the attachments were. It's kind of a hack around the current generation of models. In the latest models, you don't really need to do it anymore. You can probably just write in normal Markdown, and the models are now good enough that they can kind of figure it out. I still kind of have a habit of doing it, because when you hit work for your agents file, every single conversation. So this is not like, you're not writing a book here.
Right. What he's saying is true. We don't need XML, and largely, this is going to be a bit of a hot take. You don't really need an agents file. Yes, agents files can be help with consistency, and as you say, you're not writing a book. You want to have these bullet point things not to do, but this still will take up context. So keeping this as minimal as possible and easy to parse as possible, in my experience, it's actually much better to not be fussy about what it is you're trying to achieve, and keep a mental note or a physical note on the things that in the plan are actually not 100% to plan, and as long as they're not extremely fundamental structural decisions. I mean, this comes into a much wider conversation of how to approach building something while vibe coding. It's That's a whole other video. So subscribe if you want to see a video, because I've been very successful building large scale applications that are following best practices, that are secure, and they're the way I would have built them if I was building them by hand. As somebody that's got 15 years of software engineering experience, I can tell you, you can achieve greatness with vibe coding. You just have to do it in the right way. But yeah, keep your agents file minimal. You don't need any special syntax. Speak to it like a human, and you will have good results. And the reason that I think software engineers specifically are so bad at vibe coding is because we try to over optimize for efficiency. Look at Prime talking about going into a Ralph loop. Made a whole separate video on why I think Ralph loops are bad, and why this innate need for software engineers to over engineer for efficiency, and to the point where we're trying to remove ourselves from the picture, is totally the wrong approach. We need to be there to nurture this AI. We need to speak to it like a human. I think it's great to be concise about technical aspects and things that you want changed. If you want something done in a specific way, be technical and describe that. You can't leave out all of the rest of the stuff that you would usually say to a human, right? If you were speaking to a colleague and you just went over and barked a load of technical nonsense at somebody, we have this idea that these models are computers, which they are, but the interface to these computers, to these algorithms, is natural language. Like, that's the whole point. You know, we naturally as software engineers saw the immersion of these large language models and thought, great, they can write code. And then we've gone on to train models specifically on code, and train them on ability to recognize code patterns and how to create good code. But ultimately, they are English. Well, they are language models. So if we leave out that detail, we leave out the stuff that would be important to me and you, which is why I think a lot of business folk, a lot of regular people are actually way better at vibe coding than software engineers, is because they're not naturally technical. So if you find that balance between the technical and the non-technical, you'll have a much, much better ride. Like the video if you thought it was useful. Please let me know in the comments if you think I'm talking absolute rubbish. Subscribe if you're new, and join a live stream, because we're vibe coding all sorts of different applications, bringing this 15 years of experience that I've got into this new approach of getting what I want out of a machine. So hope to see you there, and I'll catch you in the next one. Peace.